What is up, YouTube? My name is Jordan. Today I've got a very special video coming your way. It's how to recreate 99 Problems by Jay-Z in Ableton. Let's get to it. All right, we've got our Ableton session loaded up here. 99 Problems is made up of 3 different samples. And the first thing we're gonna do is get those samples in, edit them a little bit, and then we're gonna add a few extra little bells and whistles to kind of finish things off. The very first thing we need to do is to change our tempo. The tempo of 99 Problems is 93 beats per minute. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing in our samples. The first one is this one. We're going to drag that in somewhere on the timeline. Also, what I'm going to do is just adjust these volumes a little bit so we can have proper listening levels. So an important thing starting off here that we're going to do is we're going to unwarp this sample, okay? And you can see that the timing of the sample is drifted. That's okay for now. We're going to actually use the tuning to get the sample in timing, kind of like the way you would do it on a turntable. So the first thing we want to do though is grab the part of the sample that we're going to be using, which I know is this part right here. I'm going to grab about that much of it. So I'm going to split that clip. And I'm going to drag just the beginning of the clip start right over to that first kick drum. Okay. Now, if we throw it back on the grid, you'll hear it's pretty out of time. Right. So we need to slow this down to effectively get it on the grid lines. So we're going to start with minus 2. And then over here, we're going to go 29. And that puts us right in line with our grid. Now we've got a beat that sounds like this. And we're not getting any of the artifacting that we would normally get from using warp modes. Very, very important distinction. So what we're going to do is actually get rid of most of the ending of this sample, okay? And we're going to drag this part of our sample over to where our second snare drum would be. Then we're going to extend the beginning of this part out. We're going to extend this part back here. And all we're simply going to do is take this second kick drum that lands on the third beat and we're going to move it ahead. And so if we loop this, now we've got the sort of basic beginnings of it. So that's our first beat. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate this out a few times just so we have the entirety of the phrase of the beat once we get going. Now, or the second sample that we're going to choose is this one. We're going to drag that in. Same kind of idea here. We want to unwarp it. So we're not using any of the warp modes in Ableton right now. We're just using the pitch to time the sample. And this one, we're actually going to leave completely as is. Only thing we're going to do is take this second snare drum and we're going to move it over to where the first snare drum is. And same thing, we're going to dupe this guy out the entire length of the phrase. Now we've got something that sounds like this. You can start to hear it's taking shape, right? One thing I'm going to do in the track, this sample is actually pretty low. So I'm just going to drop it down a little bit, say minus 12. I'm going to get another audio track into our session. And the last sample we're going to use is this one. And again, I'm going to drag it in. I'm going to unwarp it. And I'm going to change the timing on this one as well, just because, as you can see, it's not fully in time. We're going to go with this. -1. And on the right side, 38. That's going to time our sample pretty close. Now, there is something we're going to have to do to the beginning of this sample. We're going to drag the beginning playhead over to our first kind of like visible kick drum, which is this guy over here. And we're going to drag that back. Now, for the editing on this one, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this part of the beat and we're going to dupe that over twice. Then we're going to grab the entirety of it and duplicate it once. Now we've got it filling the entire phrase length of the beat. Only the second time what we do is we're just going to drag the entire sample out the way it was originally. So now our entire beat sounds like this. You can here. Now we're really in the ballpark. There is one last thing we want to do before we sort of complete this image of the beat, and that is a couple of bells and whistles. There's two other instruments that appear in the drums. One is a crash cymbal. I have one that I know is going to work for this, which is actually just a combination of crashes. Again, I'm going to unwarp. I'm going to edit this sample back a little bit. I'm also just going to turn it down because it's going to be a little loud relative to everything else. And again, I'm going to dupe it out for 1/2 of the phrase length. So that gives us this. Probably turn it up a bit more. The last thing we're going to add here is a triangle. Now, again, I have a sample that I know is going to work for this. It's called F triangle. And I'm just going to drag it right into a MIDI track. I'm going to take the sustain down, and I'm going to just draw in the phrase that I know is playing, which is this. And we're just going to duplicate that phrase. You want them all to be the same note. I can see here I made a mistake. There we go. Now, the other thing that we're going to do too is we're going to do a little bit of automation on the decay. In the original track, these second two notes that we have here, when you play a triangle, you can mute the triangle with one hand as you're playing it with another. So these second two notes, as well as this note over here, are both being muted. So to get that effect, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the decay of the triangle out quite a bit to about 5 seconds. So it's sustaining. But I'm going to go into my automation lanes, and I'm going to take that decay time and turn it all the way back down just for those two notes, maybe somewhere around 200 milliseconds. So that gives us this. And same thing, I'm going to take that and I'm going to duplicate that automation out for the entirety of the phrase. And now that gives us something like this. So just panning it a little bit to the right and dropping it down into the track. Now we've got the basics of the drums in 99 Problems. Now, there's a couple of other tonal things that we need to get in. One of them comes from the same sample that we already used, but a different version of it. There is a version of this song that has a note at the beginning of it. And if you're using that version of it, you'll be able to get both the drum beat and this starting note from it. So we're just going to drag that in, and you can see here right at the beginning there's this big long note that fades in. That's what we want. So I'm going to split this clip after that, and I'm going to reverse it. After I've reversed it, what I'm going to do is just turn it up a little bit. I'm going to adjust the clip start just so it's a little closer to the beginning of the note. I'm going to clip this region after 1 bar. Okay, and now to get this playing nice in the track, what we need to do is we need to process it a little bit. What I'm going to do for that is I'm going to grab a saturator in Ableton and drag that in. We're going to go to hard curve on the type. The next thing we're going to do is drop the dry wet down to about 50. And we're not going to add much here, maybe just a couple of dB. Maybe we'll go 2.9. We're also going to drop back this output here because it will increase the volume. So that gives us this. Ah, yeah, we know that sound, don't we? So the next thing we're going to do is add a little bit of delay. Believe it or not, if you listen to this in the track, you can hear it kind of taking up space across the stereo spectrum. And I'm pretty sure that's being done with some kind of short slapback delay. So same thing, we're going to grab a delay. And I'm going to take it off sync on both sides. And we're just going to pick a couple of values that kind of feel slappy, like maybe something like 80 on one side. And sure, we'll go 95 on the other. I'm going to take the feedback all the way down. So we don't really want any feedback on this delay. We're also going to take the filter off. And so we want just the full frequency range of this guitar note being processed. Dry wet at 50% or so. And we've got something that sounds like this. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate that, and we're going to take this sample and we're going to drop it down an octave. This is to sort of effectively get us a bass version of the sound. So I've clicked on my pitch knob over here. I'm going to hit shift and down arrow. That's going to drop the sample down an octave. You can get rid of the excess here. Also, another thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this delay. That gives us something like this. Now, there's still a couple of things to be done with both of these samples. One thing is on the top sample, I want a little bit of EQ, and we're going to want something kind of like a smiley face. We want to boost some of this low end, and we want to boost some of this high end. Actually, a lot of this high end. We want to be able to hear the sort of the fizziness, a bit more of the fizziness of that distortion. So then we get something that sounds like this. We're going to jump down to this bottom sample. We're going to do not quite as aggressive as of an EQ. We're really just going to boost some of this low end. Somewhere around 60, maybe. Let's have a listen to that. Maybe a little higher, because we just want that fundamental, maybe around 70. That feels about right to me. What we're going to do next is we're going to get the sample over to the second half. On the very last beat before it crosses into the second half of the phrase, we're just going to take the first beat of the sample and we're just going to turn it down 2 semitones, very simply. So all in all, this gives us this. Okay, now we're getting close. We're almost there. The very last thing we need to do is throw in a sub. I believe that there is a sub in this song. It's being hidden for sure, but just for due diligence, it's a good idea to have some sub frequencies in there. Now, this song is in E, and so we're going to throw an E sub that kind of covers the same thing that this bass version of our guitar sample is doing. And we're just literally going to mimic that exactly. And so we've got something that sounds like this. I'm actually going to take that and I'm going to drop it down an octave. So make sure we get that real trunk rattling, shaky kind of thing. Playing it all together, that gives us this. Now there's a couple of things left to do. We need to process these drums a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of the drums and I'm going to group them. And I had the privilege of speaking to Andrew Scheps about this track. For those that don't know, Andrew Scheps is the mixer on 99 Problems. And it was before he had his Neve desk and a lot of the gear and equipment that he used at Punker Pad West when he was still in Los Angeles. So it was before he had a lot of that gear. And he told me what he had, or what he was using primarily, was this tiny little Mackie mixing console. And believe it or not, he had rented distressors and was using a lot of distressors during this time. And basically he said when the tracks were coming in from Rick Rubin and Jay-Z's camp, he was literally just kind of printing them through distressors. So I thought, okay, well, let's start there. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to find a distressor. I am partial to the UAD distressor, so we'll throw that on. And it's kind of like, you know, go aggressive or go home kind of thing. I'm going to throw the distortion 3 on. Maybe we'll do the opto setting to start, and then we'll feather it in. We'll see what it sounds like. So here are all the drums with a little compression. Okay, so that's with compression. I adjusted a couple of levels and stuff as well, but here's without. And here's with. Okay, now there's another couple of things we want to do here as well. We need some EQ for sure. Another thing I know that Andrew Scheps was using on this mix is Neve style EQs. He did have a rack of Neve EQs. I'm going to grab a 1073. And we'll chuck that on. And Andrew is famous for doing kind of a smiley face kind of thing. So I'm going to boost a little of this high shelf. I'm going to boost a little, we'll do a little 1.6 and we'll do a little 220 and engage that EQ. So that gives us something that sounds like this. All right. right, so we've got some nice slappy, silly EQ going on. And the last thing I'm going to do, just because the Neve can't really get us there, I'm going to throw in a Pro Q3. And there is a fair amount of low end in these drums that we want to kind of, tease out. So I'm going to do a pretty decent resonant high pass filter somewhere around 50, 60 hertz. As I said, just to tease out more of that low end. That gives us something like this. I'm also just going to turn down the output of this group because we're starting to push the levels a little bit. So now we've got that rumbly low end that we're used to hearing in the track. Let's hear it all together now. To me, that sounds pretty good. The last thing we might want to do is add just a little bit of overall compression to everything. Again, I know Andrew is famous for doing a lot of parallel compression. Maybe we try something like that. I know he uses a lot of 1176s, and I know he uses them in multi-mono mode. In fact, I think I have a multi-mono setup. I do. If you've seen my video for multi-mono compression, this is exactly what it was I was setting up in that video. If you're interested, you can go check it out. I'll put a link in the description. So what we've got here are two 1176s that I've essentially set up in multi-mono mode. So what we're going to do is send a little bit of this entire mix to this 1176. I'm going to turn it down quite a bit. In fact, I'm going to bypass it and then I'll bring it in. Let's send, full blast, and we'll see what our 1176s are doing. Okay, yeah, that's way too much. So I'm going to back that off quite a bit. Okay, I think we can go a little bit more, maybe around 10. Let's try that. Okay, I'm seeing the movement that I want to see, and now I'm going to just essentially feather that in. So we've got a little bit of parallel compression going on there. The last thing I'm going to do is just some overall compression. Again, I know that Andrew likes a Neve 33609, so let's find one of those. All right, and we're going to use this one in multi-mono mode as well. Recovery, we're going to throw down to 100. I'm going to throw the threshold as high as it can go for now, just so we can feather in the amount of compression that we want, and then we'll set our makeup gain adequately. So we've got this. So we're already getting a fair amount of compression, but I want somewhere around 4 dB. All right, and there we have it. That is how you recreate 99 Problems in Ableton. Let's have a listen one more time. All right, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. I checked my analytics recently, and it turns out that over 95% of people that watch these videos are unsubscribed. So if I have earned your subscription today, please click on the subscription button and click on the notification bell so you can be notified when more videos like this come out. My name is Jordan. Thanks for sticking around. We'll see you soon.